3 seconds. That was all she had. Zola heard the shot before her brain translated the sound into meaning. It was sharp, close, and wrong in the way that sounds are wrong when they do not belong in the space they arrive in. Then the world tilted. A hand came from nowhere, large and fast and absolute, and pressed her flat against the corridor wall behind a steel supply cart. Before she had time to decide whether to move, she did not scream, she did not breathe. Above them, the corridor window shattered. Glass came down in a clean, quiet cascade, almost beautiful in the low hospital light, and then there was silence. The kind of silence that is louder than the sound that came before it. Footsteps, fast, 2 sets, retreating down the far stairwell. Then nothing. Zola turned her head. The man beside her was Korean, mid-30s, and bleeding. Not a small amount. The dark stain at his shoulder was spreading through the fabric of what she could already tell was an expensive black suit. He was pressed against the wall the same way she was, but there was nothing panicked in his posture. He was completely still. His breathing was measured. His eyes were moving, scanning the corridor with the calm efficiency of someone who had been in worse places than this and survived all of them. He turned and looked at her. She looked back. The look lasted exactly long enough to establish one thing. He was not afraid. And somehow, inexplicably, looking at him, neither was she, which was insane, which made no sense at all, which she would spend a very long time afterward trying to explain to herself. "Don't scream," he said. His voice was low, even, and left no room for negotiation. She almost laughed. The urge came from nowhere, and she swallowed it immediately. "I wasn't going to," she said. Something moved behind his eyes, just briefly. She looked at his shoulder. The nurse in her was already past the fear, already assessing, already cataloging entry point, spread pattern, pressure needed, time sensitivity. "You're bleeding badly," she said, not to comfort him, just as a clinical fact. "I'm aware. You need to let me look at that. You need to leave this corridor. I'm not leaving until I know whether that bullet is still in your shoulder." Another pause. Longer this time. He studied her face the way someone studies a document they were not expecting to receive, as if she was information he needed to process before responding to. "You're not afraid of me," he said. It did not come out as a question. It came out the way facts come out when they are surprising ones. "I don't know who you are," Zola said simply. "I just know you're losing blood." Those 2 sentences, spoken in a quiet hospital corridor at 2 in the morning, with glass on the floor and the smell of gunpowder still in the air, were the 2 sentences that changed everything. She did not know who he was. She only knew he was bleeding, and she was a nurse. That was all she was operating from. No fear, no agenda. Just instinct and training and the particular stubbornness that had kept her functioning through 32 hours without sleep. She pulled herself to standing, reached into the supply cart that had just saved both their lives and pulled out what she needed. He watched her. He did not move to stop her. She worked quickly, efficiently, with the specific economy of motion that came from years of doing this under pressure. Her hands were steady. His eyes stayed on her face the entire time, not the wound, her face. She had just finished securing the pressure dressing when she felt it. The floor moved, or she thought it did. The corridor tilted gently to the left. She had been awake for 32 hours. She had not eaten since morning. The adrenaline that had been holding her upright was leaving her body all at once, and there was nothing she could do about the timing of it. She went down. Not slowly, not dramatically, just cleanly, suddenly, straightforward, and the last thing she felt before the dark came up to meet her was his hands, both of them this time, catching her before she hit the ground. The man who made Seoul's most dangerous people afraid caught a nurse he had never met before she fell, and stood there holding her, in a shattered corridor, completely still, not knowing what to do with that, not knowing what to do with any of it. He had survived bullets, betrayals, and the kind of losses that hollow a person out from the inside. but he had never once in his life had someone look at him the way she just did. Like he was simply a man who needed help, not a boss, not a threat, not a name that meant something to be afraid of, just a man, bleeding, in need of a steady hand. He did not know yet that this woman, this stranger who smelled like antiseptic and something warmer underneath it, was going to be the one thing his empire could not protect him from. Her name was Zola, and she had no idea what she had just walked into. Before I go any further, I need to stop for 1 second. Where are you watching this right now? Drop your city in the comments below. I want to know where in the world this story found you tonight. Now back to Zola. The hospital Zola worked in was not a regular hospital. She knew that in the vague way that employees know things they have decided not to examine too closely. The patients here did not come through the front entrance like normal people. They arrived through a lower-level access corridor, always at night, always accompanied by men in suits who stood outside the rooms and made no eye contact with the nursing staff. The paperwork was always pre-handled. The names on the charts were sometimes clearly not real names. The fees were paid in ways she did not ask about. She told herself it was a discreet facility for wealthy clients who valued privacy. That story was clean, and it held up as long as nobody pressed it. What Zola did not know was that the facility she worked in was one of 7 across Seoul. What she did not know was that all 7 were owned by a single holding company registered under a name she had never heard. What she did not know was that the man whose shoulder she had just dressed, the man currently sitting in the corridor watching her unconscious form with an expression he could not name, owned all of them. 3 floors below where Zola lay unconscious, Taeho's phone was ringing. Evan picked it up before the second ring. "He's still up there," Evan said into the phone. Not a question. The voice on the other end was quiet for a moment. Then, "Who is she?" Not a question either. Evan looked down at the information on his screen. A name, a nationality, a work history, a work. 3 years in Seoul, before that a hospital in Nairobi. No criminal connections, no family ties to any of the organizations, no reason, on paper, for anyone to be concerned. "She's a nurse," Evan said. She was on shift, wrong place. Another silence, longer this time. "Make sure it stays that way," the voice said. Evan looked up at the ceiling above him, in the general direction of the corridor 3 floors up, where his boss was still sitting with a woman he had just met. Something about that bothered him. Not the woman. Taeho. Taeho had not stayed. In 7 years of working beside this man, Evan had never once seen Taeho stay. Zola woke up in a private room she did not recognize. Clean. Quiet. Better than anything on her ward. The sheets were expensive. The lighting was low and warm. There was a glass of water on the bedside table that had not been there when she closed her eyes, which meant someone had been in the room while she was unconscious, which should have frightened her more than it did. She sat up slowly, checked herself with the automatic self-assessment of a nurse who knew exactly what to look for, and found that apart from the bone-deep exhaustion that had taken her down, she was fine. She looked at the door, closed, but she had the distinct feeling of someone standing just on the other side of it. She was right. Taeho stood in the corridor outside, jacket removed, wound dressed properly now by his personal physician who had arrived 17 minutes after Evan made the call. His shoulder ached in the dull, familiar way of wounds that have been attended to but not healed. He stood with his back against the wall beside her door and looked at nothing in particular. He told himself he was waiting because she had treated him, and he repaid what he owed. That was the story he was telling himself. It was a clean story. It held up about as well as hers did. The door opened. Zola stood in the frame. She had found her shoes. Her hair was still mostly up. She looked at him the way she had looked at him in the corridor. Directly. Without the small social performances most people deployed around a man who looked like him. No deference, no fear, no calculation, just assessment. "You stayed," she said. "I owed you. You don't owe me anything. I'm a nurse. That's my job." "Then we're even," Taeho said. But neither of them moved. The silence between them was not uncomfortable. That was the thing that would bother Zola for days afterward. It should have been uncomfortable. He was a stranger. It was 2:30 in the morning. She had just collapsed in a corridor. The whole situation was strange and slightly alarming, and she should have felt all of that. Instead, she felt the particular quality of being in the presence of someone who was not performing for her, and she had not felt that in a very long time. "I need to get back to my ward," she said finally. "Your shift ended 40 minutes ago," Taeho said. She stared at him. "How do you know when my shift ended?" A pause, the first hesitation she had seen from him. "This is my hospital," he said, and he walked away before she could respond. Zola stood in that doorway for a full 30 seconds after he disappeared. His hospital. She turned the words over in her mind, looking for the side of them that made ordinary sense, and could not find it. Because the men she had always assumed owned facilities like this were the kind of men whose names appeared on lobby plaques and donor walls, respectable names, civic names. Not a man who showed up in restricted corridors at 2 in the morning with a gunshot wound and eyes like still water over something very deep underneath. She should have asked more questions. She should have reported the incident. She should have done a number of things that a person with fully functioning self-preservation instincts would have done. Instead, she went home, made tea, and sat at her kitchen table in the dark for an hour, thinking about the exact quality of the way he had looked at her. Not what the look meant, just the texture of it, the stillness of it, the way it had not asked her for anything. She told herself she was tired. She told herself her judgment was unreliable from the exhaustion. She went to bed and did not sleep. 3 miles across the city, in an office on the 14th floor of a building with no visible signage, Sena sat behind her glass desk and read the report Evan had filed. She read it twice, slowly. The second time, she set it down and looked out at the city for a long time without blinking. A nurse. Kenyan. 3 years in Seoul. No connections. Sena had heard that before. No connections had a way of becoming all the connections in a very short time when Taeho was involved. She had watched it happen before. She had managed it before. 3 times in 7 years, she had watched a woman begin to soften something in Taeho that Sena had spent enormous effort keeping sealed. 3 times she had intervened, each time quietly, each time completely. Taeho did not know about any of that. Taeho believed those women had simply moved on, lost interest, been frightened off by the reality of his world. Sena had made sure he believed that. It was, she had always told herself, the most loyal thing she could do for him, the kindest version of protection. She picked up her phone. "I need to stop here and ask you something because this question has been sitting with me." Sena genuinely believes she is protecting Taeho. In her own mind, she is the most loyal person in his entire life. Every woman she removed because she believed she was keeping him safe. Does that make what she is doing forgivable, or does the reason behind cruelty make it worse? I genuinely want to know where you stand on this. Tell me in the comments right now. "Find out everything about her," Sena said into the phone. Her voice was the same register she used to schedule meetings. "Where she goes, who she knows, what she wants." A pause on the other end. "And find out if anyone else saw her with him last night." She ended the call, folded her hands on the desk, and went back to work as if she had just confirmed a calendar appointment. That was what made Sena dangerous. Not the things she did, the complete and unbothered ease with which she returned to normal afterward. Meanwhile, Taeho was not sleeping either. He sat in his private study, jacket draped over the chair behind him, a glass of scotch untouched on the desk, and stared at nothing in particular. Evan sat across from him. This was a familiar configuration. Late nights, difficult silences, problems being turned over in the dark. But Evan had been watching his boss for 20 minutes, and the problem being processed tonight did not look like any problem he had seen before. "She didn't know who I was," Taeho said finally. Evan said nothing. He had learned long ago that Taeho's first sentences after a long silence were not invitations to respond. They were statements being made to the room. She just worked. Her hands didn't shake until it was over. A pause. They shook after. Evan watched him. That bothers you. It interests me. That's the same thing, Evan said quietly. For you. Taeho looked at him. Evan held the look without flinching. He was one of the very few people permitted to say true things to Taeho directly, and he spent that permission carefully. I'm not doing anything about it, Taeho said. I didn't say you were. I'm saying it so you don't have to. Evan nodded slowly, looked at his hands, then looked back up. For the record, he said, I think her hands shaking after means she's brave, not reckless. There's a difference. Taeho did not respond, but his jaw moved in the small way it moved when something had landed somewhere he was not ready to acknowledge yet. He picked up the glass of scotch, set it back down without drinking. Go home, Evan, he said. Evan stood, paused at the door. Her name is Zola, he said. Just the name, no context, no implication. He closed the door behind him. In the study, Taeho sat alone with it. Zola. He said it once, in the interior space where he kept things he had not decided what to do with yet. Then he opened his laptop and went back to work. He was very good at going back to work. 3 miles across the city, Sena was already building her file. He came back, 3 days later, not to her ward, not dramatically. He appeared in the hospital cafeteria at an hour when the morning shift was changing and the place was nearly empty, wearing dark trousers and a black long-sleeve shirt, no jacket, no Evan, no entourage, just him. He got coffee. He sat at a corner table facing the door, and when Zola walked in 12 minutes later, still in scrubs from an overnight shift, looking like a woman running on the absolute last of something, his eyes found her immediately. She saw him at the same moment. She stopped walking for one step, just one, then kept going. She got her coffee. She stood at the counter for a moment, her back to the room, and had what appeared to be a very brief internal argument with herself. Then she turned and walked directly to his table and sat down without being invited. You own this place, she said. I do. Which means you could have had me reassigned after what happened, and you didn't. No. Why not? He looked at her for a moment. Because you didn't do anything wrong. She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. He noticed the gesture, the way she held things, fully and warmly, as if trying to extract every degree of heat they had to offer. I never reported what I saw, she said. I know. I should have. Probably. I didn't because you covered me first. Before I even understood what was happening, you moved. You covered me. He said nothing. I don't understand someone like you doing that for someone like me, she said. We didn't know each other. I was nobody to you. You were in the wrong place, Taeho said. That wasn't your fault. People in your world don't usually care about that distinction. A pause. No, he said. They don't. She studied his face, openly. She had the particular ability of nurses, of people who spent their entire careers reading vital signs, to see beneath what a person was presenting on the surface. What she saw was someone who was exhausted in a way that sleep did not fix. She recognized that exhaustion. She had her own version of it. She did not say that, but something in her expression softened, just fractionally, and she looked away first. That was the moment Taeho understood he was going to come back again. He came back 4 more times over the next 2 weeks, always with a reason, a document that needed her signature regarding the incident, a follow-up as part of employee duty of care, small administrative reasons that neither of them believed for a second but both accepted without comment because the alternative was naming what was actually happening and neither of them was ready for that yet. The conversation stretched. An hour, then 2, then 3. Zola told him about Nairobi, not the painful parts, not yet, but the texture of it, the smell of rain on red earth, the sound of the market on Saturday mornings, the particular quality of light at dusk that she had not found anywhere else in the world. Taeho listened with the complete, rare attention of someone who had not been genuinely interested in another person's interior world in a very long time. He told her almost nothing in return, but he kept coming back, and in the small moments, she noticed things. The way he set his coffee cup down with the handle facing her, not himself, automatically, as if making things easier for the person across from him, was an instinct that had survived everything else that had been stripped from him. The way he listened without waiting for his turn to speak. The way he looked at her when she said something that made him almost smile, that specific pause before he redirected the expression back to neutral. She was in trouble, and she knew it. What she did not know, what she could not have known, was that in the building 3 blocks from the cafe where they sat for their 5th conversation, Sena was reading a surveillance report with the focused stillness of someone who has seen exactly this pattern before and already knows how she wants it to end. This one was different. She had seen Taeho be curious about women before. She had seen brief attraction. What she was reading now was not curiosity. What she was reading was a man returning, voluntarily, repeatedly, without operational justification, 5 times in 14 days. She had not seen that in 7 years, not since Mara. She put the report down, rolled her neck once, then picked up her phone and said 2 words, full history. She said Zola's name the way you say the name of something you are already in the process of removing from a space where it does not belong. And that was the moment the story stopped being about attraction and started being about war. Neither Taeho nor Zola knew it yet, but the audience did, and the weight of that knowledge was going to sit on everything that came next. Cole arrived on a Tuesday. Zola did not know he was in Seoul until he was standing outside her building at 7 in the evening, hands in his pockets, looking up at the windows the way a man looks at something he gave up and cannot stop calculating the distance back to. She saw him from the pavement before he saw her. She stopped walking. Her groceries were in her left hand, and she stood there for a full 10 seconds, looking at the familiar shape of a man she had spent 3 years trying to unlove. The first thing she felt was not the anger she expected, it was exhaustion. The specific exhaustion of knowing a conversation has always been coming and having to face it now. Zola. Her name in his voice, after 3 years. She closed her eyes briefly, opened them. How did you find me? I never stopped looking. She almost said something to that. Stopped herself. You need to leave, Cole. I need 10 minutes. You needed 10 minutes 3 years ago. You needed to tell me the truth 10 minutes before I found out the way I did, at our own engagement party from her. You needed... She stopped, pressed her lips together. She was not going to do this on the street. Not tonight. When? She looked at him for a long moment. The history between them was physical, almost. She could feel the weight of it in her chest. The gravity of something that had been real and was also broken and was somehow both of those things at once. I'll call you, she said, and walked past him into her building without looking back. She did not call, but Cole's arrival cracked something open in her interior architecture that she spent the next 3 days trying to ignore. It opened the part of her that she had sealed when she left home, the part that still asked, at 2 in the morning, not whether she had been foolish, but whether walking away from something broken was wisdom or retreat. Whether the version of Cole who had stood outside her building with that expression deserved to stay in the past permanently or deserved, just barely, one honest conversation. She was deep in this on Thursday morning when Taeho walked into the hospital cafeteria. He read her immediately. He had learned to read her over 6 meetings in 2 weeks, which was either a talent or a problem, and he had not yet decided which. Something happened, he said. Someone from my past showed up, she said. Taeho sat down. Someone who matters. Someone who used to. He was quiet. She could feel him processing it. She could feel also the particular stillness that fell over him when he was managing something he did not want to be managing. She did not know that Taeho understood exactly what it felt like to have a person from your past reappear and rearrange everything you had built since them. She did not know the name Mara. She did not know the 7 years. She did not know any of it. But that same evening, 60 floors above the city in his private office, Taeho received something that rearranged his world far more violently than Cole's arrival had rearranged Zola's. Evan placed the folder on Taeho's desk and did not sit down. "I found something," Evan said. "I wasn't looking for it. It found me through someone in the financial layer who didn't understand what they were handing over." Taeho looked at the folder, did not open it. "Tell me, the 3 women, the ones who disappeared from your life over the last 7 years, the ones who stopped returning calls, or moved, or simply went quiet." Evan's voice was steady. He was delivering this the way surgeons deliver catastrophic news, directly, without softening that would only prolong the damage. "They didn't leave on their own." The room went very quiet. "Someone helped them leave," Evan said. "Someone close to you, arranged it each time, systematically." Taeho's hand rested on the folder. "Show me the name," Taeho said. Evan pointed to the folder. Taeho opened it. The name in the folder was Sena's. Everything Taeho thought he understood about the last 7 years of his life began to move. And the midpoint of this story is right here. Because everything the audience has already watched, every cold moment, every wall, every year of distance and control, was built on a lie that someone he trusted installed in him deliberately. Rewatch the beginning with that knowledge. It lands differently now. Taeho did not confront Sena that night. He sat with the information for 48 hours. This was how he operated with things that required precision, not speed. Speed caused noise. Precision caused outcomes. He needed to map the full shape of what Sena had done before he moved a single piece. He needed every year, every woman, every intervention documented and confirmed before he said a word. What he found over those 48 hours was worse than expected. And he had expected something terrible, but the world did not pause for Taeho to process it. Because on the same evening, Taeho was building his evidence board in silence. Zola met Cole for the conversation she had promised him. She had called him, not because she had forgiven him, because she had decided that carrying unfinished business from her past into the life she was building here was something she could no longer afford. She was putting down roots in this city. She was not going to let old weight pull at them. They met at a quiet restaurant near Itaewon. Cole was early, she noticed. He had always been early when something mattered to him. It was the thing she had loved most and resented most about him at the same time. He talked for a long time. She let him. She sat with her hands in her lap and she listened to the full version of a story she had only known the ending of when she left. He had ended things with her friend 6 months after it started, he said. He had spent 2 years trying to be the man she deserved and failing. He had not told her because losing her was the thing he was most afraid of and honesty was the guarantee of it. He knew now that the silence had been its own betrayal. He had come to Seoul because he needed her to hear him say that to her face, not to ask for anything, just to say it. She looked at him across the table. "I believe you," she said. His shoulders dropped with the smallest measure of relief. "But believing you doesn't change what it felt like," she said. "Finding out the way I did, from her. At our engagement party, in front of everyone who thought I already knew." She paused. Let that sit exactly where it needed to sit. "I spent a year rebuilding the part of myself that trusts people. I'm still building her. I can't dismantle that for someone who made her necessary in the first place." Cole nodded slowly. His eyes were wet, and he was not trying to hide it. That surprised her. The Cole she had known 3 years ago would have hidden it. "Is there someone here?" he asked. Quietly. She was still for a moment. "I don't know what it is yet," she said honestly. "But yes, there might be." She went home alone. She stood at her kitchen window looking at the city and felt something close in her chest that was not grief. It was more like a door she had been holding open out of habit finally swinging shut on its own, gently, without drama, just done. The space it left behind filled almost immediately with a face she had not invited. The very next day, Taeho came to find her, not at the hospital, At the small park near her building where she walked in the early mornings. He was sitting on a bench when she arrived. She stopped on the path. He looked up, and the quality of his expression, unguarded, something working very hard beneath the surface, tightened her chest before she had taken a single step toward him. "I need to tell you something," Taeho said. She sat down beside him, not close, but beside him. "I own the hospital. I told you that. What I didn't tell you is what kind of man owns a hospital the way I own it. What kind of work paid for it." He was looking at the path ahead of them, not at her. "I run things in this city that are not legitimate. That is not the full description, but it is the honest one." He paused. "I'm telling you because you look at me like I am just a man, and I have not been just a man to anyone in a very long time. And I don't want to become something else to you because of something you found out later that I let you find out later." The park was completely quiet. She could feel the weight of what it had cost him to say that. She could feel her own chest responding to it, against her best judgment, against every carefully maintained boundary. "I know," she said. He turned to look at her then. "I've known for 2 weeks," she said. "Cole told me when he arrived. He did research before he came." She looked down at her hands. "And I still came to have coffee with you." "You still came back," Taeho said slowly. "You kept coming back first," she replied. "After a bullet, after everything. You always came back, and you were never anything other than exactly what you are in front of me. That is rarer than you think." He reached across the space between them on the bench and placed his hand over hers. Not romantic, not possessive, just present. A person reaching across the distance that fear had put between them. She did not move her hand. It was the most peaceful either of them had felt in years. That peace lasted approximately 18 hours. Then Sena moved. Sena's approach was never blunt. Blunt was for people who had not thought the problem through. What she did was elegant in the way that calculated things are elegant when they have been designed by someone who understands human nature as a system of vulnerabilities rather than qualities. She sent someone to Cole, not to threaten him. That would have been detectable, traceable. She sent someone to inform him, specifically about the nature of Taeho's business, about the documented level of danger that proximity to Taeho carried for the people around him, about 3 separate incidents in the past 4 years where people connected to Taeho had been targeted through the people closest to him. Casualties, names, dates. She did not ask Cole to do anything. She simply placed real information in front of a man who loved a woman and let that love do the rest. Cole went directly to the hospital. He found Zola in the corridor outside her ward at the end of her shift, and his face was doing the thing it did when he was frightened for someone he loved, the particular tightening around his eyes. He took her arm. "We need to talk right now. Cole, right now, please." Before I tell you what Cole said next, I need you to sit with this for 1 second. What Sena just did, using a man's love for a woman as a weapon, turning care into a tool of removal, she did this while Taeho trusted her with his life. She sat across from him every day, she watched him be alone, and she manufactured reasons for him to stay that way. If that is making something in your chest tighten right now, drop a comment. Tell me what you would do if you found out the person you trusted most had been operating your life from behind a curtain for 7 years. Tell me. Cole told her everything. The empire, the incidents, the specific danger that loving Taeho historically carried for anyone near him. He told her with the sincere urgency of a man who was not trying to win her back but was genuinely terrified for her life. Zola listened with a very still face. "He told me this himself," she said quietly when Cole finished. "He was honest with me. Being honest doesn't change the danger, Zola." She went home. She sat at her kitchen table in the dark and stared at the impossible equation in front of her. She could stay, and every person who wanted to reach Taeho had a door through her. She could leave, and Taeho would have no way of knowing it was not his honesty that drove her away, but the cost of proximity to him for the people around her. She could tell him what Cole had said and walk directly into whatever Sena had arranged for that exact outcome. Every option caused suffering. Hers. His. Cole's if he stayed near her. Evan's if the wrong thing happened. At that exact same hour, the evidence Taeho had been building reached completion. He called Sena. "I need you at the office," he said. His voice was the same register it always was when he gave instructions. Flat. Even. Expecting compliance. "Now," he added. Sena arrived 12 minutes later. She was dressed as she always was, composed, pleasant. The expression she wore to every meeting in 7 years, the expression Taeho had seen so many times he had stopped looking beneath it. She walked into his office and her eyes went to the evidence board on the wall. Her composure held for exactly 3 more seconds. Then she saw his face. "Sit down, Sena," Taeho said. She sat, because sitting when he said sit was 7 years of muscle memory. "Tell me about the women," he said. The silence stretched long enough to be a decision. And then Sena told him, not as a confession, as a justification. She told him about each one, and the reason behind each one, and her voice held steady throughout because she genuinely believed in every word she was saying. She believed she had protected him. She believed it with a clarity that was more disturbing than guilt would have been. Taeho listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said one thing. "Tell me about Mara. Stop right here. Before Sena tells him what she did to Mara, before you find out what the truth of 7 years ago actually was, I need you to make a prediction in the comments right now. What do you think Sena did? Because whatever you are imagining, I promise you, what actually happened lands harder than that. Write your prediction, then keep watching." The silence in the room lasted long enough to be its own kind of answer. Then Sena looked at her hands and told him, Mara had not left. Mara had been given a choice that was not really a choice. Real documentation of Taeho's world, carefully assembled, placed in front of a 23-year-old woman who had grown up entirely outside of it. A quiet private meeting, a bank transfer, a one-way ticket, and a message delivered in Sena's pleasant, composed voice that left absolutely no room for misunderstanding. Leave tonight with this, or stay and find out what happens to people who stay. Mara had left. She had not stopped loving him. She had simply been too young and too alone, and too frightened to know that the alternative to leaving was fighting, and nobody had told her fighting was an option. Sena had made very sure of that. Taeho stood at his office window for a very long time after Sena finished. The city below looked the same as it always had, lit and moving and indifferent to the specific catastrophe happening 60 floors above it. He had built an empire the way you build a wall around a wound, not to heal it, to contain it, to make sure nothing could reach it again. And the wound itself, the thing he had built everything around, had never been what he thought it was. The rejection he had turned into the architecture of his entire identity had been manufactured and installed in him by someone he trusted absolutely. He thought about Zola. He thought about the way she had looked at his shoulder and thought nurse first, the way she had not moved her hand on the park bench, the way she had said I know and stayed. He thought about the specific texture of being with someone who wanted nothing from him except exactly what he was already. He called Evan. "Find Zola," he said. "Tell her I need her to know something. Tell her I understand now why she is the way she is because I am the same way, and tell her I want to say that to her myself." Evan found Zola at her apartment. She opened the door in her burgundy wrap dress, natural hair loose around her face, and Evan looked at her for a moment with the expression of someone delivering a message they believe in with their whole chest. "He wants to see you," Evan said. "Not as his employee. He said to tell you he finally has something completely honest to say and he wants to say it to your face." She came. She found him at the hospital. Their hospital. She caught herself thinking those 2 words and did not push them away. He was in the corridor where they had met, not for drama, because it was honest. It was the one place she had seen him without his armor on, and he had come back to it. He told her everything: Sena, the women, Mara, the 7 years he had spent being cold around a wound that had been constructed from a lie. He told it the way he told her everything, directly, without performance, with the specific spare honesty of a man who had run out of reasons to protect himself from being known. When he finished, Zola was quiet for a long moment. "You built your whole self around something someone else manufactured," she said. "Yes. So did I." She looked at him steadily. "I left home because I believed I had terrible instincts, that I could not read people, that I would always be the last to know." She paused. "But I read you correctly from the beginning. I knew what you were and I stayed. That is not bad instincts. That is a choice." Something moved in Taeho's face, the particular movement of a person who has been carrying something alone for a very long time and has just been told they do not have to. He reached for her hand. She let him take it. "If Taeho and Zola feel real to you right now, if this story has been sitting in your chest the way I built it to, then this channel is exactly where you need to be. Every story on this channel is made with this exact intention. Hit subscribe right now. Turn on the notification. Because what I am building here is not content. It is stories that stay with you. And you do not want to miss what comes next." Sena was removed from her position that same night, quietly, completely, with the same absence of drama that she had always used on others. There was a particular weight to that symmetry that Taeho chose not to examine. What he did allow himself, for the first time in 7 years, was to leave before midnight. He drove to the small park near Zola's building. He sat on the bench where they had sat together and looked at the city and thought about all the versions of himself that had led to this one. The boy before the empire, the man who had loved Mara, the cold, constructed version, and this one, sitting on a bench with no agenda and no armor and not afraid of what that meant. What Taeho understood, standing in that corridor holding her hands, was the thing that power had spent 7 years teaching him the opposite of. Loyalty built on fear is not loyalty. Control is not the same as protection. An empire full of people who obey you is not the same as one person who chooses you. He had paid for that understanding with 7 years of his own warmth, and he was not willing to pay with a single day more. Before this story ends, I need you to do one thing. Think of someone in your life who rebuilt themselves after being betrayed by someone they trusted completely. Someone who packed up and started over in silence and chose healing over bitterness. Share this video with them, not for metrics, for them, because Zola's journey is their journey. And sometimes people need to hear that the rebuilding was not a retreat, it was preparation for something worth arriving at. Zola's phone rang at 11:30 that night, a number she did not recognize. She answered. Silence on the line. A breath. Then a woman's voice, soft and careful, like someone who had rehearsed and was now abandoning the rehearsal. "My name is Mara," the voice said. "I don't know if Taeho has told you about me. I think maybe he has now. I got a call tonight from someone I haven't spoken to in 7 years and I just needed to know that he's..." The voice broke very slightly. "Is he all right? Is he finally all right?" Zola looked out at the city, Seoul at night, a city she had arrived in running from something and had somehow found something else inside entirely. She thought about Taeho's face in the corridor holding her hands, about the 7 years stolen from him, about the version of love that survives being lied to and dismantled and rebuilt from nothing, about the woman on the other end of this call who had been 23 years old and alone and had made the only choice that felt survivable. She thought about all the ways that people break each other without understanding the full scale of what they are doing. She thought about how long it takes to stop expecting the worst from the next thing. "He's going to be," Zola said. She meant every word of it. But Mara's call was not the end. It was the opening of a new and far more dangerous chapter. because Mara had not called simply to ask about Taeho. She had called because she was carrying information she had held for 7 years and had finally decided someone needed to know. Information about the night she was removed. Information about who gave Sena the original instruction. Information that pointed, slowly and then all at once, towards someone who was not Sena. Someone who had been inside Taeho's circle longer than Sena. Someone who had never once been suspected. Someone who was still there, right now. If you need to know who that is, and I know you do, Part 2 is coming, and it will break something you were not expecting to lose. Make sure you are subscribed, set the notification, because when Part 2 drops, the last thing you want is to find out you missed it. Zola and Taeho found each other at the very bottom of everything they had survived. The question in Part 2 is whether they can survive what has always been watching. If this story pulled you in, you already know this is where you belong. More stories like this drop here every single day. Don't miss the next one.